Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Gilligan. I'm the Vice President of Operations for RVA757 Connects. Thank you so much for joining us for this latest edition of the RVA757 Connects Virtual Innovation Spotlight webinar series. We have an exciting and interesting program today about data centers and the role that they are playing in our economy. Just a couple of things. I just want to go over our agenda today. I'll introduce our sponsor this month. I'll give you a quick update on what's happening with RVA757 Connects and the Global Internet Hub. We'll dive into today's topic about data center industry and its rapid growth here. And we'll leave time at the very end for some questions and answers for everyone. Just a few reminder, we are recording this session, and the Virtual Innovation Spotlight webinar will be available. The recording will be available later this afternoon on our website, as are all of our webinars are on our website as well. You'll get an email later this afternoon when it's up and running. Also, if you have any questions, please send those questions to me in the chat function. RVA757 Connects is a nonprofit organization, so we rely on donations. And one of our corporate investors is Truist Financial. Here to tell us more about Truist is Jared Pattison, the market president for Virginia East area from Richmond region to the Virginia Beach area. Jared has over 17 years of banking experience with BB&T, now Truist. He started with BB&T's Leadership Development Program in 2007. Most recently, he was the commercial banker and regional corporate banker. He earned a BS degree in economics and commerce from Hampton-Sydney College, where he played Division III lacrosse. And before I turn it over to Jared, I just want to note that Thomas Ransom, who is the Virginia market president, I guess presumably that would be your boss, Jared. He is on our board of RVA757 Connect, so we thank him for his service. Jared, let me turn it over to you so you can tell us a little bit more about Truist.
Perfect. Thank you, Greg. And thank you, everyone, for listening in and allowing me to speak here today. As Greg mentioned, my name is Jared Pattison. I'm the market president for Virginia East for Truist. Little about Truist. Truist Financial Corporation was formed in December of 2019 as a result of the fourth largest merger in U.S. history between BB&T and SunTrust Banks. Truist is a purpose-driven financial services company committing to inspiring and building better lives in communities. As the seventh largest bank in the country, we reach over 10 million households across our footprint and over 108 local Truist branches from the RVA to the 757. Even with size, we operate locally within our community banking structure of 14 core regions of the bank. The primary regional businesses include retail and small business banking, commercial banking, and wealth management. For our business clients, this allows us to serve by the motto, we are as large as you need us to be, but as small as you want us to be. More importantly than everything is everything that we do at Truist about care through the dedication we have to our vision, mission, and values by serving our communities locally through our CRA community development efforts, our teammate-driven lighthouse projects, and our Truist Foundation. When it comes to business in Virginia, we ask all our commercial banking teammates to help their clients by understanding who they are, where they want to go, and where we can add consultative value to help them get there. Please come visit us or reach out to one of our commercial bankers so we can learn more about you and how you can add value to your business. Thank you again, and we appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jared, and thank you for telling us about Truist, and thanks again to Thomas Ransom for serving on the board of RVA757 Connects. But I also want to thank all of our corporate and individual sponsors for their financial support. It's very, very important and helpful to us. So let me give you a quick update on what's happening with RVA757 Connects. As you may know, RVA757 Connects is an organization that's bringing the power of convening, connecting, and collaborating to the mega region. Our mission is dedicated to improving the economic success and quality of life for everybody in the Richmond area, which we call RVA, and Hampton Roads, which we call 757. We're an association of leaders representing business, community, and higher education, and we're advancing the Richmond to Hampton Roads mega region as the I-64 Innovation Corridor. Our relationship can be kind of packaged in several different ways. We're regional collaborators, for instance. We're the 12th largest mega region in the United States, and we're an innovation corridor. As you can see, we're pursuing several different priorities We're helping the I-6 for Innovation Corridor become a global internet hub, and more about that in just a few moments. We're supporting multi-use trails in the mega region, the Fall Line Trail, for instance, and from Ashland to Petersburg, as well as Trail 757, which was formerly been called the Birthplace of America or Boat Trail. That's been renamed, and the new name is now Trail 757. And this multi-use trail is planned to start at the eastern end of the Virginia Capital the Virginia Capital Trail in Jamestown, and then go through on the peninsula and end up in Fort Monroe. And then another route would go from Jamestown across the James River Ferry and go to Surrey and Suffolk, and then Smithfield, where it'll then join some existing and other planned trails and end up at the Virginia Beach oceanfront. We also advocated for the widening of Interstate 64, that 29-mile gap from the end of Richmond to Williamsburg. That now is fully funded and construction has started, and this will be finished by 2028, where 3 lanes will be in each direction between Richmond and Hampton Roads. You can read more about all of our initiatives and other things, our priorities, on our website at RVA757Connects.com. One of our key priorities is to spearhead the efforts to have the Richmond to Hampton Roads megaregion designated as a global internet hub. We spent much of 2022 and last year developing a strategic plan to make this happen. Now we are implementing that plan. The bottom line is that the digital assets that we have in both regions, both Hampton Roads and in Richmond region, puts our mega region as a whole on our way to becoming a global internet hub. You know, we live in an age where data is growing exponentially. Internet traffic has increased 5 times in the past 5 years, and 90% of all data that exists today has been created in the last 2 years. Just think of all those devices that we have now on our smartphones, for instance, our cars, everything is data oriented. There's been a big explosion in the past year or so just with use of artificial intelligence, and then add on autonomous vehicles that are coming on board soon. How are we going to keep all of this organized and moving along to benefit everyone? The answer is digital infrastructure. Just like we have roads to help us move around, you have to have infrastructure to move data around. This map is one of the best ways to kind of understand the global internet hubs is to see them on concentrated hotspots or nodes on the world map. When we look across the planet, we see hubs where carrier networks and content delivery folks and cloud services and IT services tend to gather together and form these hubs or nodes, where they're all important to moving data around, providing access to data. In America, Miami is one of the top 10 global internet hubs on the planet. You can see that a large number of the global internet hubs are in Europe and then in the Far East. So there are several key characteristics that make up a global internet hub. You got to have robust terrestrial networks, and you have to have intercity terrestrial networks that exist to connect all these various markets together. Some jurisdictions go the extra mile and build network rings, dedicated network rings that are connecting municipal governments and colleges. And that's happening in the Hampton Roads region, where 5 cities have chipped in to build the municipal network ring that connects their municipalities. Then you need a place to store all that data. And that's where data centers come into play. There are about 12 data centers in the Richmond and Hampton Roads regions. There are more in Northern Virginia, which is considered the world's largest concentration of data centers, sometimes called Data Center Alley. Global internet hubs need to have consistent power to make the whole network work. 24% of Dominion Energy's output goes towards data centers these days. And you need to have internet exchanges. So you can take all these networks that are overlaid terrestrial networks, and you connect them all together at connection points called internet exchanges. And they are inside, some data centers. Not every data center, not every city has internet exchanges. We have one. The last part that's needed are subsea cables, and we have 3 that come ashore in Virginia Beach. So all these components are needed to make up a global internet hub. When you view the Richmond area and the Hampton Roads together, we have these core components or digital assets in place needed to become a global internet hub. So the world's next global internet hub isn't a single city, but rather America's 12th largest mega region, known as the I-6 for Innovation Corridor. This 3-foot by 2-foot map explains visually how the I-64 Innovation Corridor becomes a global internet hub by combining the various digital assets from both the Richmond region and Hampton Roads region. If you'd like to get a copy of this map, please let me know. There's a map brochure. We would be happy to send one to you. Our journey started in 2012 when Hurricane Sandy caused so much destruction to the New York coastline and New Jersey coastline that it prompted the development of a third East Coast landing site for subsea cables. Virginia Beach was chosen as a landing site for subsea cables. The first one opened in 2018, but since 2019, the I-64 Innovation Corridor has seen a 73% compounded annual growth rate in international internet bandwidth, according to one of our consultants. Coming ashore in Virginia Beach are 3 subsea cables connecting the United States to Spain, France, Puerto Rico, and Brazil. A fourth cable is available on that site. And just to note, the Donat cable from France that opened up in 2021 is owned by Google. 4 more cable landings are planned for a second landing site in the Sandbridge area of Virginia Beach. Work on that should start this year. These subsea cables come up Interstate 64 and Route 60 and connect in eastern Henrico County, where Meta, which is Facebook's parent company, has invested more than $1 billion in a 2 million square foot data center campus. The first phase of that data center opened up in 2020. The second phase opened up early in 2023. Then right next door is QTS Richmond's data center and a network access point. QTS was the first large data center to operate in the Richmond region. It's been operating for more than a decade. It's now enlarging the size of that facility. Another part of the mega region's internet infrastructure is the location of a DKIX internet exchange point. German-based technology company DKIX established 3 locations in the Richmond area, 2 in Henrico and 1 in Hanover, in data centers for these exchange points. DKIX operates similar exchange points in only 4 other U.S. markets: New York, Dallas, Chicago, and Phoenix. What does all this mean for our mega region? Internet hubs deliver many advantages. Simply put, these hubs create the opportunity to build a growing and a sustainable 21st century economy. At the top of the benefit list, of course, is having the most robust network and having the lowest latency. That means fast service, which means that will attract IT and tech workers and industries and companies that need this type of talent. Having a digital infrastructure actually grows IT and tech jobs and increases productivity per worker, increasing our total GDP output growth. All of this is creating more high-tech jobs for our mega region. When it comes to the growth of IT and tech jobs, both the Richmond area and Hampton Roads region are lagging behind. Let me explain a little bit about the research that was done for us. We looked at mature infrastructure hubs across the country. These are places like the Seattle and the Dallas and the Denver and Portlands of the world. They really have invested in their infrastructure, their digital infrastructure. Their 10-year growth rate of IT jobs is 4.5% average annual rate, with really high-paying jobs in the IT tech industry. Now let's look at the 11 major cities that the Richmond region and Hampton Roads region compete against for economic development projects. These are places like Charlotte and Orlando and Jacksonville and Nashville and Raleigh. The average growth rate there in those markets is 3.54%. The overall U.S. average in IT tech job growth is 3.1%. But look at the bottom of this chart. The Richmond region and Hampton Roads combined had a 10-year average growth rate of 1.19%. We are lagging behind most of those mature digital infrastructure cities. We are behind our competitor regions, and we are behind in the U.S. average. We are not growing this workforce anywhere close to what the average is in the U.S. or of our competitors or of these mature digital infrastructure hubs. We need to reverse this trend. We need to have digital infrastructure that attracts the tech workers and attract tech companies and tech workers. That way we can have the robust economy in the future. Global internet hubs attract a growing level of business interest and investment. These hotspots attract companies that want to locate near the fastest and most reliable internet service. This in turn attracts tech talent. And the success cycle just keeps feeding on a continual growth. Our opportunity is to move forward with a strategic plan. This is our number one initiative as we need to make our region stand out in the world to get more investment, to move faster in building a robust global internet hub so we can have these jobs of tomorrow. We created a brochure, as I mentioned, and that lists some of the 10 strategies. Here they are now, but again, we can send you, if you'd like, just email me and let me know. We can be more than happy to send you the actual brochure itself. You can also find all this materials on our website at RVA757Connects.com, as well as the globalinternethub.com website. You can click on the map to get a better idea of these digital assets, and you can help us spread the word. You can also read the full strategic plan and executive summary on our 2 websites. So all of this brings us to today's topic about data center industry seeing a rapid growth in the I-64 Innovation Corridor, with tens of billions of dollars in projects approved or proposed, and more on the way. More data centers are on the way, as I mentioned. Tens of billions of dollars of investments are being made in the data center industry, basically from the Fredericksburg area south to the Virginia-North Carolina border, where Microsoft has a big data center complex. And then if you go all the way over to the eastern Virginia, to Hampton Roads, this dollar investment includes land purchases, projects under consideration, data centers under consideration, and all the equipment necessary. In the Richmond area, in the past couple of months, data center projects have captured the headlines. Let me just kind of review some of those. Denver-based Track, for instance, has purchased and gotten rezoned 1,211 acres stretch of rural land in Hanover County, just east of the town of Ashland, for a planned data center park. Track is also seeking rezoning in Caroline County for 853 acres campus just west of Interstate 95, and a total capital investment there of $9 billion. And Track says that they have a couple other projects in the pipeline. Richmond-based developer Horgan won rezoning a couple of weeks ago for a 622-acre tract of land in eastern Henrico County for a possible data center park that is seen as an extension of the White Oak Technology Park. Early drawings for that project included projects with about 13 buildings that were shown as data centers. Then there's a California-based developer who wants to bring a data center to Powhatan County on undeveloped 119-acre tract of land near the Chesterfield County line, just north of Route 60. Carissa Technology Parks, which is an Irish-based data center company, acquired the former Capital One data center in the Meadowville Technology Park in Chesterfield, and it is now expanding its data center campus from about 500,000 square feet of space, data center space, to more than 1 million square feet of data center space for hyperscalers to use when it's all completed. There's a Reston-based developer that just recently filed a rezoning request approval for a project in the town of Ashland, just east of Interstate 95. This Iron Horse Business Park would take shape on about 230 acres, split between Ashland and also in Hanover County. Again, this could either be for an industrial park and or a data center campus. In Charles City County, just east of the Richmond region, Point One is planning a data center campus on 178 acres site off of State Route 609, a couple miles south of Route 60. The campus would have 5 buildings. The land is already zoned for data center use. Permitting is not yet underway, as Point One is currently finalizing the master plan for this campus. But Point One plans on buildings of between 1.8 million to 2.7 million square feet of space. And in Virginia Beach, Point One is also developing a 10-acre data center campus there that's all infrastructure ready and could be built and be ready within 12 months, they say. So all these data centers are paying huge local taxes and contributing to their economy and to their community. Data center tax revenue for Loudoun County, for instance, was over $700 million in 2022. In Prince William County, the data center tax revenue was more than $100 million. And in Hanover County, the tax projections for the tract data center park would offer an estimated tax revenue of around $40 million a year over the first 5 years, and over the 20-year, it's estimated to be about $1.8 billion in tax revenue. And it's more than just taxes. Meta, again, Facebook's parent company, has spent $3.2 million in recent years on community investment in the Richmond region. And Henrico County is taking a unique approach by using tax revenue generated from its growing data center industry as means for funding a $60 million housing trust fund. Now let's find out what it takes to become a data center. Let's watch this short video.
Our life is a digital life, filled with streams of information.
Whoops, sorry.
Our life is a digital life, filled with streams of information flowing ceaselessly. Every click, every swipe, every interaction connects us. But where does all that information go? Enter the world of data centers. So, what exactly is a data center? At its core, a data center is where the digital interactions of our lives happen. It's the engine room of the internet, where information is routed from everyday requests to digital platforms, and finally to its destination. Data centers are powered by three main components: electricity, connectivity, and cooling. Picture a network of cables, servers, and cooling systems working in perfect harmony to maintain many of the functions we take for granted. The value of data is immeasurable, and not just because we love our funny cat videos. It's the digital foundation for hospital staff, first responders, and military personnel to quickly and accurately perform their duties. Data centers inject capital back into the local economy, creating jobs, contributing significantly to state and local tax revenues, and often reducing the cost of energy for homes. They attract more businesses to the area, and their innovative designs use little to no water. From job creation to technological innovation, data centers provide a chance at a better, more connected, and innovative future.
So now let's dive into what's driving this growth and how data centers are kind of reshaping Virginia's economy, and what role data centers play in a pivotal in terms of innovating and empowering our digital future. We have three experts today to discuss the data center industry. Let me introduce you to them. First, Nick Blessing, who is the Director of Public Policy and Economic Development for QTS Data Centers, which owns and operates a data center campus in the White Oak Technology Park in eastern Henrico County that was one of the first large data centers in the Richmond region. Then we'll hear from Amber Tillman, who leads the public affairs and community development for Google's data centers in the eastern United States and Canada. Google has invested more than $3.2 billion in its data center campuses in Loudoun and Prince William counties, and in April announced an additional $1 billion investment in Virginia for 2024. Google, as I mentioned earlier, owns the Donat cable, subsea cable that comes ashore in Virginia Beach from France. And then finally, Stan Blackwell, who is the Director of Data Center Practices for Dominion Energy. Stan has been responsible for Dominion's energy data center practice and management of other data center operations customers throughout Virginia as well as into North Carolina. As I mentioned, we're going to leave time at the very end for some questions. So if you have any, please use the chat function for this. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. I'm going to ask Nick to start off our conversation, and I'm going to ask each of our panelists kind of give us a 2 to 3 minute overview about what you're seeing from your lens, in your company's operations, the data center industry as a whole. So Nick, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And Greg, thanks for having me and the rest of the panelists here. I will say Admittedly, I first felt like an interloper here between the 804 and the 757. I grew up as a 434 kid. So when Jarrett mentioned he went to Hampton Sydney, I felt right at home. Jarrett, I grew up on Back Hampton Sydney Road, so right down the street from you. It's a distinct honor for me to be here as a lifelong Virginian. One of the things that I have thought about and focused on during my 8+ year tenure at QTS is exactly what we're discussing today, is how do we leverage data center development and investment, make it work for our regions, our regional partners, our communities, and importantly for the Commonwealth, diversify the Commonwealth's economy, and also ensure that the phenomenon that's happening in Northern Virginia not only follows the I-95 corridor, but the I-64 corridor as well. Greg, the map that you originally showed to show the density and concentration of that development, I think what you can see there is it's very largely following infrastructure. And so I typically answer this question by saying it's infrastructure. Infrastructure always leads the way because there is a gravity to development. For those who participate on the development side of the world, you know that that is the first enabling, unlocking factor to a lot of these communities. What is very unique is that Virginia and many of our local communities have provided that type of stability, predictability, and then hard physical infrastructure to make developments like QTS's Sandston facility possible. There, we were very fortunate to find an opportunity in the Cumanda plant. Now, those of you who may remember historically, around 2008, 2009, Cumanda went into bankruptcy and QTS was able to leverage that asset and repurpose it as a brownfield development for data centers. Fast forward 10 to 15 years, we were incrementally able to have co-location success in the core facilities that were located within the metes and bounds of that original microchip fab. But since then, we've been able to invest quite literally to connect regions and fiber into that facility to create a growth path. I probably way out of school for saying this, but being a first mover, I think our investment in that region, in that facility, in the fiber, and pulling in additional infrastructure helped contributed to the gravity that ultimately led strategic partners like Meta to locate in the region in White Oak. And so what we are starting to see in the industry is that the access to infrastructure and the partnership with communities and regions, or in this instance, the partnership between 804 and 757, I think really lays the groundwork for the positioning of these respective communities in this region to be a leader. I mean, the video does a great job in talking about the factors that are driving this type of phenomenon. Whoever contributed to that copy must be fairly intelligent. I would suggest to you this is, Greg, you talk about the number of users and the types of devices and the bandwidth that we're seeing, but the example in that video is the one that I always like to point to. It is machine-to-machine interactions that are facilitating the click that we make. If I call an Uber on my phone, I hit one button. That has to transmit through cell towers, terrestrial fiber, has to route through a data center, talk to an algorithm, and conversely, the same thing from a driver who's ready to receive a signal. That calibrates who's closest to me, tells me the amount of time, tells them the route, where I should go to meet them, projects a fare. All of that happens seamlessly within milliseconds. And my interaction is literally the click of a button. So the digital enablement of all of those functions happens across technology, across transportation, across healthcare, across defense. And all of those trends are continuing to increase as our economy has moved from a traditional economy or regional economy to a fully digital economy, right? The way in which we interact with all of our personal information, with other businesses, with one another, this conversation right now is facilitated by and contributing to the purpose of data centers. So I think as an underlying precedent for the growth that we're seeing, that's it. The other piece that everyone will start talking about, that you're reading about in the headlines, is what is quantum going to do? What is machine learning? What is AI going to do? I would say this, and maybe just to be provocative, if you set those phenomena aside, what's happening now today, the trends that are empowering our economy, our daily lives, are going to continue to exponentially increase. We are creating and consuming more data, not less data. And the multiplier effects that we may see from AI or ML are tremendously exciting. I think it's going to unlock an immense amount of potential. I think it's going to create an entirely new playing field, and having an opportunity to leverage not just one region, but two, and the connectivity, the compute power, the infrastructure that's in place from Dominion is phenomenal. And personally, Greg, I got to tell you, I didn't realize that you were supporting the expansion of 64 to 3 lanes. I mean, that's brilliant. That's absolutely spot on to what we need to be doing to make sure we're a physically connected mega region as well as one that's connected from fiber. I would have to defer to Amber too, from what she's seeing. You know, QTS is a co-location provider. We develop, partner, and provide services, but ultimately the technology is ours. Our core focus is to make sure that strategic partners like Google focus on the innovation and the core functions of their business to drive those innovations. Amber may have a better commentary on the different phenomenons and moving factors that kind of influence what's actually creating and driving some of these signals.
And it's a great segue. Amber, you want to take it next?
Sure. Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Nick. I think everything you just said was spot on and very accurate. As Greg said, I lead public affairs for Google in Virginia. And while we don't have a presence in Central Virginia, we do have 2 campuses in Loudoun County, one in Prince William County, and then our subsea cable out of Virginia Beach. So Virginia is a very critical part of our cloud portfolio and our broader technical infrastructure portfolio as it relates to data centers and connectivity across the U.S. Google has been an AI-first company for many years. So we've always, focused on the innovations and things that we can build into our own products. And those are things that y'all have probably seen if you use Google Maps, like finding the most efficient and sustainable route. That is all AI powered, and that's been going on for years. But what we have seen more recently is this unprecedented demand for AI technologies, AI innovations on the cloud side, that other businesses and sectors like healthcare and banking and things that we all rely on and we all use every single day are now building into their core services as well. So that is what we're seeing a lot of the growth and the demand for more data centers and more capacity and more technological advances that we really just haven't seen before. In Virginia, with the robust infrastructure throughout the state, proximity to federal government services, we're just in the perfect spot to really accommodate a lot of that growth here. So that's kind of what we're focused on right now, making sure that Virginia is fit from a business perspective to still be that place for us is really critical to all of us. As Greg said, we've invested billions of dollars in our short time here, and we've seen incredible growth from great community partners and great partners at the state level as well. So as the AI demands continue to come, and they will, I don't think we're stopping at this point. I think that we'll see more of that here in Virginia too.
Great, thanks, Amber. So Stan, let me turn it over to you and give us your viewpoint.
Yeah, hey, thank you for having me. And I'll start by saying, the message I think is about opportunity for other communities, 757 RVA. The opportunity is here. We have 2 very large data center companies present. You heard them speak. But in Virginia, we serve 50 discrete data center companies, small ones, all the way up to large ones like QTS and Google. And so there's a lot of companies here today, and more are coming to feed this industry. Today in Virginia, you saw a high-level bubble map Greg presented. We actually serve over 450 discrete data center buildings today. The reason I mention opportunity is we've had a big change. AI is driving it, a big migration out of very traditional data center areas like Loudoun County. And you're seeing a proliferation. QTS and it was on the bleeding edge of going to different areas, but that kind of development outside of Loudoun County is exploding and moving into areas that haven't historically had data centers. So for the communities represented on this call, now's the time. If this is the industry for you, the opportunity is here. It's coming if you want it and if you will support it.
Well, Stan, that's great. That's a good segue to my first question to anyone on the panel is, are we seeing this, when you all mentioned AI and all these other things that is really driving the need for all these data centers, but are we also seeing that the Richmond and the Hampton Roads region is going to replace Northern Virginia as a data center concentration, or are we going to see them as a complement to them?
Why don't I start that off just from I'm fortunate, working at Dominion, we get to see all of the projects in development that aren't public. It's the Northern Virginia, Loudoun County really is by far the largest market in the world, and nobody's going to catch it. And so I don't think the aspiration of 757 RVA is to overtake Loudoun County. The aspiration is to complement it. And that same complement will occur in different areas in the Commonwealth. And so that's the way to think about it. And I will go back to opportunity. There is so much opportunity for communities along the 757 corridor. You don't have to get as big as Loudoun. You just have to get some of it, and it will be great for your communities. And I'll
Yes.
defer to Nick and Amber.
Stan, I think you're right on. I'm going to do my best to try and paraphrase Anthony Romanello. And again, I'm biased because we've been in Henrico for 15 years at this point, maybe longer. I don't think Henrico would say they want to be Loudoun County. There's a different way of doing business. There's a different mentality. I mean, I can tell you, growing up in Southside, there are real different personality attributes to these areas. And I don't think that the Central Virginia region necessarily needs to emulate Northern Virginia. Don't get me wrong, they've had a tremendous amount of success, and I think they'll continue to. But even what I'm hearing on this call, the intention around connectivity, coordination, taking a mega region approach is already fairly different. I think you have an opportunity here to be complementary. And I think when you look at the genesis of this market, the Hurricane Sandy example is perfect. It used to be that if you were located in Northern Virginia, you'd have to go to New York to cross the Atlantic. And now you've got that opportunity in Central Virginia. And just like we talk about infrastructure having gravity, that's got real live translations to how companies want to relocate. You could have organizations that, for example, let's just say Bank of America needs to focus on international transactions. All of a sudden, it makes a lot of sense for them to be in Richmond. Maybe that's a bad example. Maybe I should have used Capital One. Maybe I should have used Truist. I should have more social awareness, right, Jarrett? But the point being is that gravity, that type of alignment, that type of coordination, I think is really critical and creates a unique complement that to Northern Virginia, but also an important differentiation as companies like QTS or Google look to continue to invest in the state and look to diversify their portfolio. One of the things that I've had an opportunity to see practicing economic development and site selection across the country is that personalities, people, relationships really matter. And I think the folks who are represented here on the call today are doing it in exactly the type of way that the industry is going to be receptive to.
Amber, do you want to add anything?
No, again, spot on, Nick. This is it's like right out of exactly what I would.
I'm sorry if I'm taking your talking points.
No, I love it. I think it's exactly right. It's a lot of follow the leader. So where is there that infrastructure that we need to build? Where are the community partners at the municipal level that are going to help us move our projects forward quickly? There's always, we need a robust talent pool on both the operations and construction side. So are there educational institutions that can help with that? And obviously Central Virginia and 757, that we're equipped with all of those resources that we need. I don't see anything taking over what's happening in Northern Virginia, but I do think as companies look to grow their markets, grow their cloud regions, they have to go to different places as well. So we're in a good position to do that here.
So this is probably mostly for Nick and Amber, but what role do data centers play in our modern economy, or do they have a role?
I think they are the modern economy, right? I don't think there's any process that's happening anymore. That's not, I mean, I don't know, Greg, when's the last time you balanced your checkbook with a pen and paper? I mean, right,
Use this.
that's exactly my point, is that every function that we have now is virtual, is digital. And I think, you know, sorry to be a little flippant with the response, but I think we're all feeling it, right? And what you're seeing is that the innovations are all driven around user experience. And what you're seeing from that interface is that increasingly the technology goes to the eyeballs, goes to the users, and that means that there is an inherent type of digitization. The best thing that Truist can do is get more users, more accounts. The way to do that is to go to people, is to participate and get adoption. And the way that that's happening is through terrestrial subsea fiber and in facilities like ours. Yeah, I think the video said we are the engine of the internet. Maybe that's the actual building, but what the pipes, the connectivity. I mean, connectivity is the right word because it's physical connections, but it's all of those economic, socioeconomic, interpersonal connections too that I think are driving those parts of the economy.
Yeah, in addition to that, and obviously like the whole Internet of Things that we all rely on, that's all driven by data centers. So they're a huge part of our economy in that sense. But data centers also sit at the intersection of real estate and the infrastructure and the technological advancement. So if you think of how much money is being spent on data center development, it's huge, and it really impacts workforce and labor wages in a state. It impacts so many different parts of the supply chain that go into the data centers. So beyond just all of the AI advances and everything that the data centers actually power, the actual building of them and operating of the data centers is a really, really critical part to the state's economy.
So we have a question from the audience, but it was also one of the questions I was going to ask you all is give us a sense of where and how I'm sorry, give me a sense of what's needed in a community to have a data center. What do you need? You have to have power, you have to have space, you have to have people. All three of you can answer this question easily. Yeah. Amber, do you want to start off or?
Was that for me?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, you can start off. What's
Sure.
needed for a community to have a data center?
So like a couple of things I just mentioned. So for us, site selection is a multi-year process. We're looking for where is there the business demand from the cloud side, or from our own core product side. Where do we need the demand? Does it have to be, is it location specific or can it be anywhere? But then when we identify where regionally we need that, we look for a strong talent pool on both the construction and operations side. Robust infrastructure in terms of land and energy and everything to power up the facilities. Community partners, so people who are going to work with us to help move our projects forward quickly and really welcome us into the community. When Google comes to town, we really want to be a part of that community. We always say, we adopt that community as our hometown, and we really want to make a difference and infiltrate ourselves into the programs that make each community unique. So those are the main things. The educational institutions to help with the workforce pipeline. Those are the most critical for us.
I would maybe add one other point. When we think about those are all attributes you have to weigh and evaluate anytime you're going into the market. Kind of the intangible piece of it also is, what's the feel, what's the look, what's the culture? And I say that because when we are looking to site, we're also looking for predictability, stability in that type of marketplace, that community. And when Amber and I talk about building relationships, that's a core component of it. But when you think about the scope of the investment that we're making, those long-term dollars, the projects, development takes a while to do. If Amber's undergoing a multi-year site selection process and decides, hey, you know what, I want this to be my landing station, well, then that multi-year process transitions from site selection to development. And it's not just short-term construction. The reason why you're seeing these announcements for larger developments is because we're all starting to take a campus style approach, which is frankly the right approach. there is an immense amount of efficiency at scale, but often that scale can be intimidating. But the way that we think about that is it allows us to continue to invest in communities consistently, create predictability, at least within our own environment. It allows us to give visibility and predictability to our community partners, to our energy partners, so that we can align and plan and communicate and drive long-term successes that allow what would otherwise be 18-month construction jobs turn into 60 months, 72 months, allowing us to keep those folks mobilized, continue to contribute and invest in a community, and make sure that the long-term goals reflect those community values. I think that's the other piece that we look at too.
Yeah, so they gave a data center, what attracts them to particular areas. So if you're a community on this corridor or anywhere in Virginia and you want to attract data centers, all the data center companies tell us what makes a great site. So Nick or Amber's companies decide, I want to go to this area. The next question is, what is the property they're going to go to? And so the ideal properties in the communities on here that want to attract data centers, I would summarize, there's really three things you have to attract large data center companies. One is proximity to existing electrical infrastructure. The closer you are to existing transmission, the faster they can bring that facility online. So if you have a piece of property, a large property 2 miles away from existing transmission, it's not ideal. If you have a large piece of property in your community that has transmission on it, that is the number one piece of property you can identify to attract a data center. So that's one thing. The second thing is, for a community looking for data centers, you have to have community acceptance of new transmission infrastructure. These facilities are large. They require a lot of power, and so it requires transmission infrastructure. And so if you want to attract data centers, identify a part of your county or community where you're willing to have that kind of development. A great example on this call is Henrico County. They have White Oak Technology Park right behind the airport. It's fairly rural, and so adding infrastructure there is relatively easy as opposed to picking a site in downtown Richmond, downtown Hampton Roads. Just simple examples. So you have to have community support in the right areas of your county. The third thing is elected official support. So your community and your politicians have to want to support this industry. And if you have those three things, then companies like Google and QTS are going to take a hard look at the properties you have to offer. But if you don't have all three of those, it makes it very difficult.
Stan, since you're already talking, let me ask you some questions relating to electricity. That's always seems to be a big issue. Can you give us a sense of, for instance, I mean, I've got lots of questions relating to electricity. Are my residential rates going to go up? How are you guys going to handle? How is Dominion Energy going to handle the increased loads? Where is all this power coming from? Can you address the electricity concerns?
Yeah, so there's one misconception we actually had recently. We were doing kind of a town hall meeting, and that particular town thought that if you landed a data center in your town boundaries, that the taxes for the individual residential consumers would go up, or excuse me, the power rates, I should say. And the electricity rates don't work that way. Electricity rates are set statewide, if you will. So having a data center in your local community or not doesn't affect the electricity rates because they're based on statewide, they're developed on a statewide basis. Your property tax benefits, however, do accrue to the local community. You didn't ask about that, but that's I think people are trying to say electric rates and property taxes work the same, and they don't. The second thing I would tell you is data centers. Greg said it in the beginning. Today, the industry is consuming about 24% of all the energy that we produce as a company. They're very heavy users. Everybody knows that. And so they're consuming a large portion of energy, and they consume it on a 24-hour-a-day basis. As residential consumers on here, you use electricity in the morning when you get up, make coffee, take a shower with electric water heater and things. Then you go to work and you come home at the end of the day and you're doing laundry and running, cooking, and doing other appliances. So you have a very lumpy load, and that's a little bit more difficult to serve than a steady 24/7 consumer. And so the data centers, given their very high consumption factors, they're paying for a very large portion of the industry, of the energy consumed today. And last, I'll say, I guess I would defer this to the General Assembly commissioned this year, the JLARC. It's a study. It's an independent study of electric rates, and is everybody paying their fair share? And let's defer to them. They're independent of everybody on this call. They were appointed by our elected officials, and they'll do that independent study and they'll answer that. I believe I know the answer, but I'll defer to the independent study because I think that's the way we as members of Virginia ought to take a look at that.
So, Amber, let me ask you this question. You know, there's a lot of concern out there that people say, "Oh, good data centers don't necessarily pay any taxes." And how can you combat that? I mean, can you talk about, and Nick also, can you both talk about some of the things we know what Meta has done, but some of the things that maybe Google is doing or QTS is doing to combat that?
Sure. Well, there was just a great report that was put out by the Northern Virginia Tech Council that studied the impact of data centers across the state. And I think one of the highlights that they flagged is because data centers are taxed locally but serve customers globally, they import taxes from other states. In 2022, this is a stat that I'll read, data centers paid $640 million in taxes to Virginia, and $1 billion of that went to local governments. So while there are incentives in place, there are also big tax benefits that come to a community. And outside of that, we also contribute locally, through charitable giving, through infrastructure upgrades, through other things that benefit the community while not putting a huge strain on the economy or on the public services like schools or roads or that kind of thing. I think the example, Greg, that you mentioned earlier is that the Henrico County Housing Fund example. So all of that bonus tax revenue from data centers is going to support low-income housing. And that just proves that there are tax benefits to having a data center in your community. But I'm sure Nick can touch on this more too.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. There's a number of different forms of taxes we pay. Taxes are relatively easy to find. So if anybody's really curious, I'm sure you could. I would say outside of those really significant impacts in local, regional, or state levels, there's a number of things that happen. We're talking about data centers as buildings, as infrastructure, but data centers house people. QTS has a saying that says we are powered by people. And that's really, that's the truth. We enable each of our people to go and take 4 full business days out to volunteer in the community. Those are 4 full paid days. And we track what we do in terms of charitable giving in all of our localities. Last year alone, actually, no, I'm sorry, this is 2 years alone ago, we donated over $2 million in our local communities, and we provide corporate matches. So there are charitable components to all of these facilities, to this industry, because of the people that comprise it.
And Nick, since you and Amber talked a little bit about employees, can you give us a sense of where are all these data center companies? Where are you sourcing your talent? I mean, there's always this misconception that data centers have very few people working there, but that's not necessarily true. Can you guys give us a sense of how many people do work in a typical data center, and what type of jobs, and where are they coming from?
I think that's a hard question to answer because it's dependent on facility, dependent on application, dependent on purpose, but there's a number of different roles that we look at. I think what's really unique about a data center is that it provides a pretty linear path for individuals to achieve or exceed middle class status. That's something that is actually really near and dear to my heart. My mother and my wife now are educators. My mom started doing career and technical education in Southside and has continued to do it in other regions in Virginia for her entire career. And so I've taken the perspective I've been fortunate enough to have from her and taken it to QTS, where we enter markets and we look specifically in those communities, in those regions, to create workforce development partnerships. Northern Virginia has a great example where the community college system there has set up a DCO, a data center technician operations program. It's a 2-year certificate program that's been a tremendous boon for the industry, but we're trying to take it a step or two further. So to answer your question, where do we look? We look in the communities where we operate. One of the first things that I do is I go and look to the regional county public school system to put in place workforce development partnerships. We take interns, unpaid apprenticeships, paid apprenticeships, any opportunity to get someone in the facility, we try and do that. I think the biggest problem and challenge that data centers have from a workforce development perspective is that you got to educate people about the opportunities, about what a data center is. And we've seen a tremendous amount of success when we take the effort to go get in those communities and drive those partnerships.
I think that's exactly right. In Virginia, Google's operations created about 3,500 jobs, 400 of those being direct jobs in 2022. So there are more jobs than I think we generally talk about. But I think what Nick said also is we hire locally as we can. And I mean that on the vendor side and also on the full-time operational side. We work with community colleges to put in workforce development programs, community colleges and also career and technical education groups with the local school systems. We have a brand new program called our Skilled Trades and Readiness program, which is a workforce development training program that partners with community colleges and our construction GCs to take people, put them through an 8-week training course where it's 4 weeks in the classroom, 4 weeks on the job site. And they focus on a number of different skilled trades, electrical, mechanical, carpentry, for example. And then at the end of it, after successful completion, they are actually placed onto one of our data center construction jobs. So that's one way that we're building the talent pipeline on the construction side. And then as Nick mentioned, we work with community colleges and schools to develop pathways to help build curriculum that educates people on the skills that they need to work in a data center or in the tech industry. Beyond our data centers in Virginia, Google also has our Reston office, which is really heavily focused on our cloud and technical infrastructure workforce there. So those are people who are, doing the data center design and architecture and the network engineers that really work to put all these things together. So beyond just the direct operations, there's also a ton of these support functions that go into them, and those are located here in Virginia as well. So as locally as we can, and then working with the school systems, both on the K through 12 and community college and 4-year institutions, to make sure that we're developing the right pathways and pipelines for everybody to get educated.
So let me ask you all, what do you see as the biggest challenges, the hurdles in the data center industry over the next 5 to 10 years, briefly? Nobody?
Amber, why don't you go first?
I was going to offer Amber too.
I was going to offer Nick.
Okay, I'll go.
Sure. Go ahead. You start.
I think what's interesting is that the technology and infrastructure industry is a real ecosystem, right? And I think as we continue to understand the opportunity of the future, we also have to be prepared to embrace opportunity for change and for growth and what that looks like. We have a real unique opportunity to innovate. We don't necessarily know what that looks like. And so I think the challenge is being open and responsive to that opportunity to make sure we are taking it on in a responsible, intentional, and appropriate way as stewards of finite resources and members of the community, right? When we go in and we site, we're looking at a couple of things. We look at 4 real things. It's land, power, water, and people. And our job is to make sure that as we integrate with that community, those resources that we're entrusted with, we're being an appropriate steward, and then we are rising to meet the challenge of opportunity in a way that benefits the company, but as the company benefits really truly the community where we operate and where we live and where our people work.
Anything to add, Amber or Stan?
I think that's exactly right. And then also, we have the opportunity to provide the education of what data centers do, why they're so critical to today's economy, and just really make sure that we lay the groundwork for future development with the finite resources available to us.
Yeah, I would add it's kind of interesting that, there are segments of our society that see the growth in the data center industry as bad. And so the challenge to me is the data centers in and of themselves aren't driving the growth. This industry is developing to meet the demand. We as consumers are what we want. So think of all the things that you're doing on your phone today that you didn't do 10 years ago. You didn't have a smartphone. And so societal changes and our desire as consumers are actually driving the demand. So the challenge is just to get those, from my perspective, in sync. The industry is developing to meet what we as society are asking for. So that to me is the challenge.
Excellent responses, panel. Let me ask one last question, and briefly, quickly, for the three of you, what can the business community do over the next several upcoming months to support the continued growth of data centers in Virginia, but mostly in the I-6 for Innovation Corridor? What can we do, briefly?
I'll try and be concise here. I think it's relationships, predictability, and stability. Stan mentioned that JLARC is doing a tremendous amount of work, and we anticipate that they will unveil that in January. Again, just like there's opportunity for the industry to grow, there's also opportunity for change. And I would just say, let's be involved, let's be intentional, let's communicate so that we can continue to provide predictability so that these projects can land in the Commonwealth.
Amber?
+1 to what Nick said. That's exactly it. The stability, the predictability, and the strong partnerships.
And I'm going to kind of go back to my opening statement. The three things, the opportunities that you as communities have, if this is an industry you want to attract: identify sites that have proximity to existing transmission, make sure your local population can accept in designated areas the development of new infrastructure, and that your political process is in support of this industry. And if you have those three things, companies like Google and QTS will take a hard look to come to your community and can help out and do a lot of the community good that they mentioned earlier. So thank you for having me.
That's great. I appreciate it. Well, I just want to finish up. Thank you, panel. That was just awesome. Very, very good. Very helpful. Nick, Amber, and Stan. Let me just briefly tell you, we're running a little bit late. I do apologize, but I think this is a good topic to discuss. Again, just a reminder that if you wanted to learn a bit more about what we're doing, go to our website at RVA757Connects.com. Also, reminder, later this afternoon, the recording of this webinar will be available on our website. You'll be able to view it then. And also, let me ask if anybody is interested in taking an active role in our Global Internet of Initiative. I know a growing number of companies have joined our efforts. If you're interested, please email me. We'd like you to join our cause. Our next virtual innovation spotlight, we're taking the month of July and August off, so the next one will be Wednesday, September 4th. So look sometime in mid-August for what that will be. The topic will be. Again, thank you to Truist for being our webinar sponsor this month. We appreciate that. And thanks to all of our financial supporters. And thank you all for joining us today for this very interesting and thought-provoking conversation about data centers. Looking forward to seeing you on Wednesday, September the 4th for our next Innovation Spotlight webinar series. Thank you again. Have a great afternoon.